Hello World Wide Web, I'm Dr. Shado, the internet personality with best hair. And I was doing a quick Sunday video here talking about something on my mind, and that thing would have to be something that's been on my mind for a while now, being the CGI versus practical effects debate. We talked about this 2 Live and Wireds ago, Practically Perfect, episode 109, where we were talking about the fact that there was the practical effects behind the scenes that kind of came out online. I wouldn't say leaked. I don't think it was something they were trying to hide and it just came through. But it kind of came off like that because people didn't realize that they had a full practical effects Predator for the movie Prey before it came out and they saw it and it was just covered in CGI. And there was the discussion that popped up there between, are practical effects superior to CGI? There were the filmmakers who came out saying that they use it to enhance it, it's better, they know that there is a vocal kind of group who are pretty hardcore about practical effects. But I ran a poll asking why practical effects are superior to CGI. There were 5 options, only one of them was pro-CGI, saying that CGI actually looks better than practical effects. And after 5.2 thousand votes, pro-CGI came in at 2%. So that's not really saying that there's a lot of love for CGI out there versus practical effects. But I also found an interesting kind of thread going on with the comments, being that a larger than expected percentage of people, at least to me, were saying that the reason why practical effects are superior to CGI is because the practical effects have kind of the love and care of the artist going into them. This kind of trying to do the best you can to make something look as good as you can, and CGI simply doesn't. Something that I take a bit of umbrage with, actually, even though I personally prefer practical effects, is the idea that it seems to be more common than I would have believed, that the people who make CGI, there's just no real artistry that goes into that. It's a very sterile kind of thing, and so looking at that, I'm of the opinion that objectively that's wrong. There is art, there is a lot of effort, there is a lot of love that goes into creating CGI, but it does not seem that way, so gotta figure out why exactly is that. And after giving it a lot of thought, I believe it's because the practical effects are objectively lower quality, technically. Depends on the practical effect to the CGI, of course, but the things that were shown with the behind-the-scenes clip from Prey with the practical effect Predator, yeah, its skin didn't look exactly right. Nah, it was animated less than the CGI version. It didn't look quite as good in certain aspects. If you try and say this versus that, like this mandible on the CGI Predator versus the same mandible on the practical effects Predator, which one looks more realistic? You'd probably lean more towards the CGI Predator for any single feature. But then you put it all together, and somehow the practical effects Predator still comes off more believable. Even though it's the sum of its parts, it should be considered less so. But I believe that it is because of the imperfections associated with practical effects that it lends itself into more believability at the end of the day. But I think I can explain this kind of phenomenon with a different medium, that if you were to go completely computer-generated with it, you could technically, very easily create something absolutely perfect, absolutely 100% just what you are trying to create with people, but it would also just completely flop, no one would want it. Well, maybe a few people, but mostly no one would really care for it. And that would be music. Now, I don't mean entirely, of course, techno is, tends to be more in that line. Dubstep, things that are more electronica, often lean more towards completely computer-generated, but even then, you want to have some kind of human element in there for it to really be taken seriously, really be considered music, and not just like a demo or something to have on in the background while you're doing something else that's far more important. So it's like with my own music, the music that I play, I am still just learning. I don't have enough time to really focus on learning music as much as I'd like, but I enjoy playing music, so I play my bass, I play my guitar, and I have dabbled in digital audio workstations and just putting together a composition that plays itself. And that last part is very easy for me because it's just down to get this kind of sample in there, match it here, go, 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 go. You can very easily make music that way, but it's not real at that point. No one's playing it. It's just being put together there. And that really drops down the overall allure of it. The imperfections of a person playing kind of grounds it in reality, and it actually makes it feel like so much more... I don't know how exactly to put this, but it's like you could have like bands just starting out, and they're just starting out, they don't have all their members yet. They'll have a drum machine, and the drum machine will play on beat perfectly, absolutely fine every time. But they need to get a drummer, a human, to play the drums who couldn't possibly play it as fast or as on beat as the drum machine, or as precisely. There's no way they could possibly be better than the machine in this regard, but John Henry style, they somehow managed to beat it out when it comes to just which would people rather listen to, the drum machine or the drummer. The drummer is impressive. The drum machine is just a box that goes boom, boom, boom. And it's kind of interesting in that regard. I feel like CGI versus practical effects fall in kind of the same wheelhouse there. Where, yes, if you look at the technical aspects between the two and what they are trying to achieve, the CGI, technically at this stage in the game, is superior in an objective sense. However, it doesn't feel like artistry in the same way the practical effects do. And the practical effects' imperfections help ground it in reality and just make it more believable because it's technically, on an objective level, lower quality in many aspects. It's one of those things. And, but that's not to say that that's how everything works out. There's another little wheelhouse where the opposite seems to be true. Where you can very easily have little clips of, video clips of actors working off each other, just acting as they were, in video games. But that's not what they do. They get the actors play the roles, they scan the actors, they make a 3D CGI version of the actor, and then they animate the CGI of the actor playing himself, and they just they'll make a CGI version of an actor for a pre-recorded cutscene, when it would be just as much space on the disc if they just had a clip of the actual actor just acting. It would be faster, easier, cheaper, and technically, objectively, look better. Like, if you're just trying to make someone look like a person, the person you're trying to make them look like, just film that. There's no way you could possibly do any better than that. But we've got to CGI it all up together, and there you go. There he is in CGI in a pre-recorded scene running back as a video clip. And that's interesting because that has to do more with the target demographic. Because CGI leans into this was made by a machine, and the whole aspect of games is, well, it's all machine made. So it feels like cheating to have practical kind of just have a person there. You could easily have actual people playing off each other in actual sets. But when you have the off game that actually does that, like Quantum Break or Control, it seems just kind of off the wall and zany, like, oh, look at that, there's an actual person. That was the opening of Resident Evil, and they got actual actors there. It's like, whoa, what is this doing here? What, a person? A person in this video? Why didn't they use CGI? This is very strange. So that's interesting there, because that's, like I said, the entire opposite of the practical effects versus CGI debate for movies. So then it's like, is it more just a cultural thing, like the filmmakers seem to believe, like there is just people who prefer practical effects, and that's what they want to have in their movies. And maybe like the newer generations, the younger generations who grew up on everything CGI anyway, they're not going to come from the same kind of perspective where they're like, oh, yes, we definitely prefer the practical effects. But even then, like, I know I have, like, the majority of my audience are like 30 years old and above. But even then, only 2% CGI is superior. So that's still, like, there's a lot more younger people watching me than that. And I would assume that not everyone in the older demographics would just be like, oh, no, screw CGI. Not 100%. I'm very surprised at the 2% for pro CGI on that poll. Still, like, over 5,000 votes later, it's still 2%. Like, that's the best it did. So it's then the question becomes, is it the medium then? Like, is film just because so much is real in meat space, the CGI stands out more than practical effects would and just looks like it does not belong? As of course, you know, like when I'm watching a movie that is entirely CGI, I'm not sitting there like, oh, this looks terrible, I don't like any of this, everything looks bad. But, like, if Prey, for instance, was 100% CGI, and the Predator looked exactly the same, or for the Predator to look exactly the same, then let's just say they had the practical one and painted over him in CGI. What if they painted over everyone in CGI? Absolutely everyone. Would that look better or worse? I would say, like, overall it would look less believable, it would look kind of worse. Maybe the teeth of the Frenchman would look a little bit more like they actually belong in their mouth instead of like they're wearing prosthetics to make them look like they have terrible teeth. But, like, overall, I feel like the entire show, the entire movie would have more of a consistent aesthetic with CGI, but it wouldn't look better. It would not look better. Because, you know, you'd have people playing people, and you'd have the people to do it, so to just paint over that would seem silly. And that's kind of how I feel with the practical effects Predator. It's like, I don't care that you technically fixed some things. You had the practical effects right there. You had it. It looked good. It looked great. It didn't look objectively superior in some ways, no, but at the end of it all, it still looked better. That's kind of how I feel about it. Full-on CGI movies, partial CGI movies, full-on practical movies. There's always a need for a combination of things going forward. You can't just pretend like the technology doesn't exist, as tempting as it can be. That would be a great way to get a lot of big movies to stick to practical effects, is just lie to them and tell them that computers were never invented. Let's see how far that goes. But nevertheless, I believe that is all the time I have allocated for today. So, thank you all for watching. I've been Shado. And remember, just fix it in post.